What's going on, y'all? Machiavelli Mills TV. So apparently there's this documentary on Netflix called Dahmer, Monster, the story of Jeffrey Dahmer, or the Jeffrey Dahmer story, right? And it's making its rounds. People are talking about it on social media, Twitter, Facebook, so on and so forth. And I'm really shocked at how many people have never heard about who Jeffrey Dahmer was, right? And I'm not denigrating anybody or shaming anybody for not knowing about it, but I was only shocked because I knew about it since I was a small child. My mother told me about Jeffrey Dahmer. I think I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I know while some of you may feel like that's traumatizing to tell a child at that age, which it can be for sure. But growing up in Chicago, Illinois, my mother always wanted us to know the dangers of going with strangers, the dangers of talking to strangers, the dangers of, letting people into the home when she's not alone, so when we were alone and she's not home, so on and so forth. And she wanted to make us aware of those things because we were living at one point on 65th and Low, which was close to where Ryan Harris, a young girl, was killed and raped. A little bitty girl, was like close to where we stayed. Right, it happened close to where we stayed at, and so my mom, since that point, my mom wanted to make us aware of the dangers of going to strangers and so on and so forth. So she told us about stories like Jeffrey Dahmer, so on and so forth. I remember I heard about it. He's a guy who was accountable, killed people, ate them up, chopped their bodies up and ate them and stuff like that. But I started to really know the intricacies of what really happened around the time I was about 14 years old. I was a freshman in high school, and I think we were doing I had a class I was taking, and I was researching certain stuff, and then for some reason, I don't know what I landed on. I landed on some type of, I was researching some information, and something of, I don't know what triggered me to do this. I don't know if it was psychology or something like that or whatever. And I'm like, man, I remember this Jeffrey Dahmer story. So I go and I look it up, and I look up the details of the story, y'all. And I promise y'all, I could barely sleep that night when I looked up the details of what he did to his victims. For those who don't know, Jeffrey Dahmer pled guilty to the murders and dismemberment of 15 boys and men, right? And so I'm hearing the stories about how he would lure people to his apartment, how he would get them intoxicated, not intoxicated, but he would he would basically put stuff in their drinks and stuff like that. And then basically he would kill them. Not basically, kill them, cut them up, put them in the freezer, eat them, and things like that. But one story in particular was something that really, really it did something to me. It was like a 14-year-old boy. What was the kid's name was Conorak something. I can't really pronounce the last name. 14-year-old boy. And he had this boy in his apartment, and the boy managed to escape. I believe, you all can correct me if I'm wrong, with the help of some neighbors. They knew something was going on. They knew something was wrong. And for whatever reason, the police came. I remember the story. I think the police came. And due to the fact that, Jeffrey Dahmer was gay, and he made it seem like the young boy was his lover, who was 19 years old, the police were really hands off about it. They didn't care about it. They really thought it was just, they really didn't even try to investigate properly. And the boy was bleeding from his buttocks, and so it was very gruesome and horrific, right? And basically the police let Jeffrey Dahmer take this young 14-year-old boy, who Jeffrey told the police he was 19 years old. They let him go back with Jeffrey Dahmer, and Jeffrey Dahmer killed him. An hour later, he killed him, cut up his body, dismembered him, so on and so forth. I think he put acid in his head and all type of crazy, horrific things. And I remember reading that story, and I couldn't even sleep at night for real, because I'm like, man, there's really this type of evil out here in this world. And so I get on Facebook today, and I look at this story of a man named Tracy Edwards. Tracy Edwards is an individual who managed to escape from Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. And he takes the stand, and he's recalling every single thing that had happened and how the night transpired, when he got into Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. So apparently Mr. Edwards, he was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was in the mall. Jeffrey Dahmer was acting like he was a photographer, basically saying he would pay individuals to take nude photos. The guy Tracy Edwards, he basically was like he needed some money. He thought Jeffrey Dahmer was a cool guy. Like, he's like, I'm not homosexual, but I needed some money or whatever. And so he went to Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. Now, Tracy Edwards was with a few other individuals, like 2 other friends. And so Tracy told him, like, okay, I'm going to go with Jeffrey Dahmer. But Jeffrey Dahmer gave the other friends his address, which turned out to be the wrong address. He gave the friends the wrong address so they wouldn't come to where he was at while he was attempting to kill Tracy Edwards, right? And this is also a sick thing, man. Jeffrey Dahmer was into necrophilia, having sex with dead bodies. And so it was all type of horrific, gruesome stuff. But anyway, Tracy Edwards describes, him going with Jeffrey Dahmer, and he, the friends were supposed to meet up with him later. But he's at the apartment. Jeffrey Dahmer is talking to him all calm and cool, and they're having a nice conversation. He goes into the apartment and he smells a foul odor in the house. And it was super foul, but he said, Jeffrey Dahmer had explained that, it's because my pipes burst. I had a pipe leakage, a pipe burst or something like that. And the smell is this, that, and the third. And he believed Jeffrey Dahmer, right? Because he knew that when pipes burst, he was working on construction, that they could smell, it can have a horrid smell. As time went on, Jeffrey Dahmer is trying to talk to him and convince him, not convince him, but he's basically asking him, do you want to, he said when he got to the apartment, he wasn't always sure if he was going to do the nude photos, but he was thinking about it because he needed the money. At the time, Jeffrey Dahmer, he's watching TV or something, or he looks over at something. Jeffrey Dahmer puts a handcuff on the man and then puts a knife across his back and tells him to do whatever he says or he's going to kill him. And he says that in the time when he pulled the knife and he put the handcuff on him, Jeffrey Dahmer was talking to him, and Tracy Edwards says that Jeffrey Dahmer's his face structure was different than what it was when he was in the mall talking to him, in the Grand Avenue Mall, I believe it was called. He said his facial structure was different when he got mad and he tried to basically tell him he was going to kill him. His facial structure was different. His body structure was different. It wasn't like the guy he met at the mall at all. He said that Jeffrey Dahmer had the Exorcist movie plan in the home. And he said that as Jeffrey Dahmer was talking to him, Jeffrey would go back and forth between the guy they met at the mall that was this super ultra nice guy to this mean-spirited individual who was trying to kill Tracy Edwards at the time. Tracy said that he would go back and forth between that nice guy and between this horrific guy who was trying to do some gruesome things to him. And it made me think, like, and then he said that during the movie while The Exorcist was playing, Jeffrey Dahmer was enamored at the movie. He was rocking back and forth, chanting while the movie was playing. And then he said it was a part where the preacher got possessed in The Exorcist movie, and that part had Jeffrey Dahmer more interested than any other part in the film. Any other part in the movie that, in The Exorcist movie that was playing. And so Tracy Edwards, and when he's recalling these things, I'm like, man, there are real life demons on this earth. And Jeffrey Dahmer is one of those individuals who's a demon. Him going back and forth between this person, this nice guy, to this horrific, mean-spirited, evil person made me think of the movie called, what was that, Split? I believe, where the guy had all these different personalities within him. And he had this demonic personality that would eat people, kill them with his bare hands, eat them, all type of crazy, wild, crazy stuff. And I'm like, this man really was a demon on this earth. The horrific things that he did to individuals haunted those individuals. Haunted the families of those individuals, I'm sure, for the rest of their lives. When they describe the accounts of, like, basically what took place, what he did to the bodies, and so on and so forth, just thinking about that was just like, it churns your stomach, right? And so they have Tracy Edwards on the stand because he is the one who got away, who sparked the police to do an investigation and figure out what was happening. They found the dead bodies, and they found the dismembered heads and stuff in the refrigerators and the freezers, and heads and arms and feet, all type of crazy hearts, taking people's hearts and eating their hearts, like all type of crazy stuff that you would think you would see on like a horror movie that wouldn't be real life. But it really was real life for this evil individual, this sick, foul, disgusting individual. And I just remember, like, I'm thinking about it, And I remember my mom told me this, and as a kid, I couldn't imagine something like this happening. It sounded too cartoonish, too outlandish. But when you have a demon really on earth like Jeffrey Dahmer, that's really what occurs. I don't know if you all are really spiritual people. I'm not a guy that goes to church. I'm not a Bible thumping individual. I believe, in Jesus Christ, and I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ and all of that. But when watching this, man, like, I'm like, man, this dude had to be a demon, for real. It had to be a demon inside of that man's body, because there is no way, I mean, facial structure changing, body structure changing. That's like graphic, like he's shape-shifting into something different. And I'm like, this is like he chanting as the possession on the movie The Exorcist is going on, and chanting, rocking back and forth. But anyway, Tracy Edwards got away, and he's the one who sparked the investigation for those bodies to be found, and the dismembered heads and all that to be found and all of that. And when he's on the stand, I can see the look and the pain in that man's eyes. I'm like, man, this brother really needed some help. I don't know if they even gave him any type of counseling, any type of support psychologically, because when you are face to face with a killer, with a demonic presence, with a demonic person like that, and you get away, and you still have to you have to live with this, the idea of what could have happened to you, the idea of what happened to other individuals who went inside of that apartment and never made it out. That can have you all rattled and all discombobulated and all type of just mentally. It can take you to a whole nother place. And I'm watching them recount everything that happened, and he's like fighting back tears, because he's like, that could have been my fate, and who knows what would have happened if he hadn't gotten away and told the police and informed the police about what happened to him and led them back to the apartment. Jeffrey Dahmer could have had 40, 50 victims before somebody else would have found out about anything. Now I'm hearing, from the documentary that neighbors talked about hearing screams, so on and so forth. And I never got to that part of the story on my own research, because I haven't watched the documentary yet. But it churns my stomach to hear those type of things. And it's like, wow. You really had a guy out here really doing these type of things to people and getting away with it, to children, to small children. And the crazy thing about it is most of, Jeffrey Dahmer was a homosexual man, because he was doing it to gay individuals and to individuals. Majority of his victims were black men. The majority of them were black men. People weren't really paying attention to it like that. They really didn't care about it. They really glossed over the story. It wasn't really a thing that they really felt like they had to be bothered with, because of people's response to the gay community during that time, but also not just gay community, to black individuals at the time who were gay. They really had no interest in searching for what was going on with black people being killed and abducted in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or going missing and never knowing where they were vanishing, and people never know what happened to them, right? And the police really didn't put forth a proper effort to figure out what was going on, because these were black individuals this was happening to, majority of them. But yeah, man, it's just, I listened to that brother on that stand talking about that, and they was just like, man, I can't imagine how that man felt. Just thinking like, man, I got away. Like, what would have happened if I didn't? And when he's talking about the story, when he's inside of Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment, he's talking about trying to disarm Jeffrey, not disarm him physically with the knife, but basically trying to get him at ease, to convince him I was his friend, so I could try to ease him out of the situation, ease him back to his normal self. Not his normal self, ease him back to the person that we talked to in the mall, versus the person that was trying to kill me and attack me and told me he was going to eat my heart, right? He said Jeffrey Dahmer was listening to his heart, laying his head on his chest so he can hear his heartbeat, because Jeffrey Dahmer was telling Tracy Edwards he was going to eat his heart, and so on and so forth. He talked about going back and forth to the bathroom, asking Jeffrey, can I go to the bathroom, trying to figure out a way to escape, thinking of a way to try to get out of the window. He thought about, I told him, can I go to the front room? Because he had him in the bedroom at first, and he said, can I go to the front room because I'm a little hot or something like that. And, he knew that the bedroom didn't have an air conditioner, but the front room did. And so he kept trying to convince Jeffrey he wasn't going to leave. He was his friend, to try to keep him in the state where keep him in the state of the nice guy that he met in the mall and not this demonic individual who's trying to kill him, because he described Jeffrey going back and forth between these two individuals the whole time he's talking to him in the apartment. He's going back and forth to the demonic evil person, to the person that they met in the mall who seemed like a nice guy, you know? And then he talked about that, you know, when he went to the front room after he told him, hey, can we go where the air conditioner is? He talked about, you know, trying to convince him that it really was hot, so he unbuttoned his shirt a little bit, try to like let him know, hey, I'm not trying to escape. And then at some point, Jeffrey went off into his own land within his own mind, and he hit Jeffrey Dahmer, and he ran out of the apartment. Jeffrey Dahmer tried to grab him, tried to get him to stay. He got away from him, and then he went to go get the police to come back. And I was just like, I don't know, man. If y'all hear this, if y'all look for Tracy Edwards taking the stand against Jeffrey Dahmer. It's probably on YouTube, because I assume it's on YouTube if it's on Facebook. And you'll see what I'm talking about, and you'll see the horrific look in his brother's eyes, because he knows he's coming face to face with evil once again. And he's seeing this guy who is really nonchalant about everything that he did, not giving a care in the world about the people who killed the children, the men he killed, you know, and dismember their bodies, cut up their bodies, and all type of crazy, horrific things. And it's just like, yo, if there are people, there are people on this earth who are capable of committing these atrocities. And, you know, that's what my mom, you know, I guess told us about. She didn't go into grave detail about it. She just talked about, you know, a guy who was killing people and cutting them up when I was a kid. But my mom wanted us to know that there are people out here who aren't nice people at all. And so while, you know, me and my sister, while we were growing up and we were coming home from school and we getting off the school bus and, you know, throughout life, don't be trusting of people because they have this outward look of being pleasant and nice. There are people who look pleasant and nice who are really horrific, terrible people. And you will never know it, you know? So you all look at that Tracy Edwards taking the stand against Jeffrey Dahmer, and you'll see what I'm talking about, man. But I haven't watched the documentary, but I can only imagine the details they went into and the things that they described. And I talk about the little boy, Conorak. I believe earlier, he was the same boy. He was the brother of the same boy that Jeffrey Dahmer molested. The year prior to that, he was the brother of a boy that Jeffrey Dahmer molested, like a 13-year-old boy that Jeffrey Dahmer molested the year before. He's this horrific individual, man. And Jeffrey Dahmer, a lot of you will take solace in knowing this. He was killed during his prison sentence, I believe, by a cellmate or just another fellow inmate. Killed him. And I don't know if what was this, 94, 95? You all tell me, was it 2000 or something? He may have killed Jeffrey Dahmer in 94, 95, something like that. He killed Jeffrey Dahmer, though, in prison. I don't remember the man's name, but I remember him being killed in prison by a fellow inmate. But yeah, you know, evil like that is not walking. Well, that evil is. There are other evils, I'm sure, that are even more despicable in the times that we're living in. But that specific evil, Jeffrey Dahmer, is not walking this earth anymore. But I just, man, my heart goes out to the families of his victims and, you know, people who lives will never be the same because he took someone from them that they love. And then I think about Tracy Edwards and how he has to live with this for the rest of his life, knowing this and knowing what could have possibly happened to him. And I know, you know, he's like, you know, of course, thankful that it didn't happen. But at the same time, you have to relive the evil that you looked in the eyes and know, like, man, that was a time when I know the brother was scared out of his mind when he felt the handcuff come across his wrist and a knife on his back. Only one of his hands was handcuffed, not both of them. So I know people are wondering how did he hit him and stuff, and his hands was handcuffed. Only one of them was handcuffed, and there was a knife to his back. But yeah, he described Jeffrey Dahmer telling him to lay it face down on the ground on his stomach, but he said he didn't do it. He kept talking to him and he just sat on the ground because he knew if he would have laid down and had his face on the ground, and Jeffrey would have killed him. So he kept trying to talk him out of it and keep him in the state of mind of the nice guy that they met at the mall versus the evil guy who was trying to kill him in the apartment. But yeah, if you haven't heard about it, you know, look it up. It's a Netflix documentary. I don't even know if you all want to watch it because I'm sure it's graphic and horrific from what I've just told you. So I can only imagine how they portrayed that on screen, you know, on a Netflix series. But nonetheless, man, hey, I'm glad, you know, people got some form of justice, knowing that he was arrested and then ultimately had his life taken away from him in prison. But people will never be the same from that. Machiavelli Mills TV, I'm out. Peace.